Today, we're back for another episode of the Automator series, and I'm with Anna Likhoa. And firstly, thanks so much for taking the time today. I'm really glad we could get this together.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I enjoy doing these things, so go for it.
Yeah. So, Anna, for those who don't know your focus and the way you work with people, um, just going to pass it over to you to say what's up to everyone, then also just tell people a little bit about yourself, like what you're focusing on, who you're working with, things like that.
Yep. So I'm Anna. I came to this position basically via a lot of questions and answers that have been in my life, and so I've kind of gone into the dating coach, relationship coach space. It was kind of one decision after another. I had no idea what I was doing a couple of years ago, if not
Mm.
3 years ago, but all I knew was that I had a passion to kind of help people not accept a crazy lifestyle if in fact they can choose better, which is kind of partly how I got here, but it was actually the fact that you might find out in the Female Advantage ebook, it's actually available through my company page on Facebook at the moment, that I was compelled to help out the guys because I was always helping out a lot of people from quarter life crisis to kind of dating relationships. I had guys sometimes coming to me to talk out things and figure out. I had one guy who was in a relationship with his woman, with his lady, and he was about to leave her actually, and then he realized a lot of things through the information that I gave him because I heard out what was going on. And they're now married and they have a kid in their house. And he realized, not everything is always about you. Sometimes you have to take care of yourself first. So that's actually what he did. He invested in I think some therapy. He had some stuff he had to work on his end. Realized that actually everything he wanted was in front of him, thanks to the information I gave him. So that's one big case right there. But that was before I actually set up and saw coaching as a job. Mostly because I've got the Eastern European background, and those guys it's just like any other Eastern family. They don't want to know what kind of fluff you're doing if in fact you can go into engineering, lawyering, doctoring, the usual. So I kind of keep everything low key until I've got something out of it. And that includes the book that I just self-published last year. So a lot going on. I had a lot of stuff on my hands, but like I said, it was one decision after another. I basically coached young men into a date and ease them into a relationship through mindset work and also improving their self-worth. Of course, this stuff evolves all the time. That's what I'm saying right now, but that's the general idea. And the best part is that I have felt a lot of appreciation in my work, and it's been so natural to me because I've got a plethora of like communication skills from all my jobs that I've done. I've been through cultures, I've lived in 2 countries. Like the reason why I was even asked for help is because my friends were like, that was crazy and she got through. I want to know how she did that.
Yeah.
And it just kept going because I enjoy that. And at some point I was like, wait a minute, if they're not paying for the advice, they're paying for the transformation, I can do that too. And it's usually like that when someone comes in and you're like the confidant and they just tell you everything. It's therapeutic on its own, but I didn't realize that until I was talking to another guy going, can you speak up a little bit more? And he was like, just by like listening, that's already enough. So I just basically put two and two together. Not a lot of people do that. So I decided to just sort of get braver, and it's just been one gigantic journey for the last 2 years. So that's basically more or less it. I hope that was clear enough. But after that, I was just basically creating a whole bunch of documents to give anyone who needs it. Actually, I believe in both the universal practices and also gender specific practices. I have to tell you, there's not much difference though, like feminine and male. Like I've helped both genders with stuff like trusting themselves more, with stuff like making a better decision, guiding them through a chaos, giving them the right tools. So that's been a lot of fun, and I enjoy that work a lot. So yeah, I've just been doing creating after creating. I don't do boredom. I just keep things up. So yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned working with mostly younger men. What type of age range are you looking at when you say younger men?
So obviously as a business tool, you're looking at younger men as a certain spectrum. In this case, it will be about 20 to 35. But because of the fact that a lot of men can relate to all the points from above, and age doesn't actually define much in that grand scheme of things, I see myself talking to, I've got a fairly senior guy on my email list who really enjoys my energy, my strategies. He's also used it up a lot. And I'm like, there's no such thing as this aging thing, because at some point that person gets experience and they make the next decision. It's actually not relevant to age at all. And I've had a 19-year-old guy actually give me the biggest compliments just through what I told him as a coach. And then I've had a 22-year-old at university going, these are my issues. And they've got a different set of problems that they're looking at, of course, because of the age group.
Yeah.
One will be more social than the other. One will be like, okay, yeah, this is me as a guy, as opposed to, yeah, I'm established, but this thing went wrong. What can I do?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a different positioning. So young men, I think I'm the oldest woman in the field of dating coaching. Like, I know that there are men who are much older. We don't tend to listen to them purely because of the way things have been evolving, which is great. I've had so much information, it's actually blows my mind. Amount of support and insight I've had, which also in turn helps me out going, what specifically can I do? So you might see in my last post, I was talking about the 90s energies. So everything that kind of leads the men off from their authentic masculinity, which is literally everything when it comes to relationships. And we're talking from the 90s. So the point of that post was actually to say it's still happening, and there's no such thing as this whole thematic stuff. It's still there. It's and it's growing. So young men, it's just a business tool thing, but I do enjoy helping the young ones, and I do enjoy kind of helping them see with clarity what's going on and how they can move on to the next level in their life.
Yeah, like I know for me, well, I'm in that range still. I'm 31 at the moment, but it's like I'd already known about self-development, especially when it comes around to dating and stuff like that when I was much younger. But like as I've gotten older, and it's also the people I have around me, the bit you mentioned about you're honestly just kind of building yourself. It's like you kind of get to know yourself better, and you get to set your boundaries better. You get to know what you like and what you don't like better. And that kind of just comes through age and experiences for the most part. Like there are definitely younger people who've had that, 19, 20-year-olds who've had crazy life experiences, but often it is kind of just comes that inner confidence seems to come just as you get older and have more experiences and more ups and downs and back and forths.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, it's nothing to do with the age thing at some it's funny that we're talking about this, because I've had a couple of girlfriends in my DMs, and both of them, actually a few years older than me for sure. The geriatric millennials, as they call them. Don't even know where we're coming up with these terms. We're clearly bored enough.
I've heard that term before.
And one was like, she's like, how old are you? And I was like, 31. But like, that doesn't matter. Like, I was raised as the youngest of the oldest. Like, my mom had me young. So, I'm just comfortable around older people more than others, maybe. And there was another girlfriend going, you don't look, she said, you don't look older than 22. And I was like, what can I say? I'm blessed to turn 30 and I look 20. I mean, cool. I'll take it.
Just turn it into like a program. It's like Anna's skincare program or whatever, youthful skincare program.
Actually, spiritual program. I would have to say, the minute you get rid of all the drum and the muck outside, you just glow, because you're actually letting yourself live, as opposed to letting others kind of tell you how life goes. And the minute you discredit their stories in a way and go, wait a minute, that doesn't have to be my story, and you choose better. Like, I'm doing that every day. Like, as I was telling, someone over the phone the other day, I was like, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. You grow this muscle where you develop that awareness and go, wait, why is this happening? What can I choose better now? And am I okay with such and such? Very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one thing you actually mentioned right at the start, which kind of jumped out to me, because I've heard kind of the thread before with other people, is that you said people kind of were already coming to you for advice even before you were like, I am a coach in the space. People were really trusting you and asking you and saying like, hey, what do you think? Which direction should I go with this? Like, why do you think that was?
I've had this interesting ability to gain people's trust easily. I've had the most reserved people come to me and tell me they're all. And when I contrasted that experience, because it's kind of special, I don't see like introverts and extroverts like as completely separate, because both talk to me about everything. In fact, I've noticed quite a lot of leaders are actually supposedly introverts, but they kind of train themselves to get comfortable and keep talking out in public, so to speak. I know at least 2 coaches at least who do that. And but yeah, all my life, even like my parent like will be like, Anna, you would go like home from school, and I had parents going, can our kid walk with your daughter? Like it's just been on forever. And at some point when, you know, enough people were coming to me for high impact advice, I just decided that I'd given up and just decided to charge them. Of course, that was just the start of the journey. You don't just charge people for these things. You have to do a whole other thing. And so I realized that for the last 2 years, it wasn't so much learning how to be a coach. It was more learning how to be a business-minded coach. So, which is a whole other skill set. And I was on the phone with someone the other day going, you know, because they were like, oh my God, look at all these millionaires going around and they have no degrees or anything. And I was like, well, there's academia and then there's life skills. They're just not correlated. I'm like, they can fail a university exam, but they can make money. Like, you can't do the math. Don't even try. So the whole confidant thing was happening for a while. It only intensified after I think I graduated with my master's. You'll find that on my website as well at vibrancelifecoach.com. And I was just talking about how once I got my master's, and just around that time period, my friends from Australia while I was in Switzerland started like calling me up and kind of talking to me. Sometimes it wasn't even about what do I do next. It was more just a therapeutic talk, because they knew I would not react, that I would be accepting, that I would be like, this is like, you know, I see that, but this is how it can also be, like stuff like that. Things where people can just talk it out. And apparently that's very extraordinary. Apparently that's very special. And I realized that not a lot of people have conversation skills, especially not men, especially not business coaches. Forget about it. I actually catch them out on the act as well. So
yeah, no, it's the part you mentioned about like people feeling comfortable that you kind of wouldn't judge or anything. I found that big part is also being like, I'm not a natural sharer. Like I really don't, like people will know me for a while and they still say to me like, we know nothing about you. Like I'm really good at asking questions. Like I'm good at asking people to share with me, but I don't share much about myself. But I realized you kind of need to, like if you share something vulnerable about yourself,
you have to,
even if it's not natural, like at the start, it probably won't feel natural, but when you start sharing vulnerable things about you, like, hey, I'm actually worried about this, I'm not sure about that, people think, oh, like, oh shit, I can actually share those worries that I have about myself as well. And then it becomes more of a like connection. Like you feel more connected because you're actually sharing truthful things as opposed to just everything's perfect, everything's amazing, etc., etc.
One of the most groundbreaking things I did, and just on that side of things, I remember I went out once with one guy, and the amount of information I knew about him one-on-one officially blew my mind, because I knew him for a while, but 1 or 2 years. But by the time we were actually, you know, talking one-on-one, he told me so much more about himself. And in my head, it was like a very reserved individual. But in my head, it was like, who are you? Like I thought I knew you, but what is this? So you just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a girl, I'm so used to people just sort of having a chat with me, just being themselves. And then when it comes to that other type of interesting individual, I just go, whoa, like, do I even want this? Like that's an element of a person that is so different to me, because I'm more on the outgoing side. I'm more on the open-minded side, which a lot of my friends try to tell me as well. So to me, it's like a completely different side of things. But in terms of, you know, connecting, I did this groundbreaking thing, which I actually put into one of my programs called the Female Advantage, called the Authentic Connection. And you just mentioned it. And one of the most groundbreaking things was that I realized that guys don't even freaking read certain things. I mean, not they can't read things, but they get overwhelmed by the digital space. And so I actually give them the tools to read that digital space in order to get that data to get a girl to talk to them. And it's actually ridiculously easy once you have it figured out, because when you realize that there's so much fluff out there, there's so many DMs from random strangers. I mean, don't get me started. You know, soliciting girls for time for no reason. And when I go, okay, this is how you can communicate. So a lot of my like communications experience came into this, which was really great. And I was basically teaching them how to read like a profile, get some data on the girl, and then actually decide whether they want a conversation at all. And then kind of build that trust from the get-go, but then also use a timeline to get the relationship going. And that seems to be a bit of an issue with most fellas, because they'll literally, one of the biggest issues is that some guys just take far too long on chats, like a few months, and then, oh, this girl's with someone else now. And I'm like, yeah, that's not like my timeline is I give them 2 weeks to sort themselves out. After that, you can try, but the thing is, you've got that momentum, you can build on it. So I give them the pacing, the communication, the skills, the way to read things, and they can take those tools pretty much anywhere after that, because their mind is set up going, oh, I have information from such and such. I'm going to go up to that girl now and make it clear that I have read her and I'm interested, but not in an imposing way. It's more to, ask them permission for something. That's something as well that guys are, well, there's a few topics, but one of the things that they don't realize is that they can actually ask for feedback and actually inspire the girl to follow them, as opposed to get all nervous and fidgety about their leadership. And I'm like, and half the time that's because they literally let in too many people's opinions into their life, and they haven't built that solid masculine core in them. Which is also funny, because both genders have this thing where they don't know where they're coming in from. And, of course, it's easy to blame the other person, but people that usually want to improve their life, they're usually looking at what can help them in the environment, which is, I think, one of the most powerful things I can teach, actually.
So, I mean, I remember you mentioned that like people were coming to you already, and that's how you kind of got your first few clients. But obviously now the way you're speaking, it's been only about a 2-year journey, right? Since you officially took on that kind of coaching label, right?
I mean, the way it started, and the funniest part is that I get caught out on this kind of talk, because I tell people, look, just because I seem confident does not mean I've been here forever. Yeah. Legitimately speaking, it's just been one decision after another. I started off as just, in fact, I had a gosh, not a hashtag, the handle, Vibrant Life with Anna, which says pretty much jack all about me. So I decided to really niche that down and called it Transiting_ with Anna. Of course, now I wanted to be a completely different thing, because I've noticed there's a certain signature energy that people have noticed about me. I'll probably change it later on. It's a bit difficult transitioning when you're building, but I was doing life coaching. I wanted to do the quarter life crisis with the relationships, but then once I went, okay, I'll just do the relationships. Then I got a bit more build up there, especially on Instagram. And just now I've started posting on Facebook publicly. And that's been a big milestone for me, being that I used to be low key about a lot of things. But then I'm like, no, you can't really do that with this job. The job is actually to be high key and loud and take up space and give that message and attract those people that need you. So that came over a period of definitely about a year or so. And that is in between all the business coaches that started DMing me when they found me. So they actually confused me, because the whole point of this coaching business is actually to give that personal style and figure it out and figure out what works for you. So that's probably the only real thing that I remember from the other year. And after that, I started figuring out what works and what doesn't for me. Like, just because you get a few likes or a few followers for a certain post does not mean that you're actually aligned and authentic and actually know what you're going for. And that's the thing, vanity metrics. I've had to train myself to go, Anna, it's not about the likes and the follows and the comments. It's about the sales process. It's about reeling people in. It's about talking to them about the problem. It's about the transaction. It's about the relationship building, which is actually a very typical point for a lot of starting coaches. I mean, starting coaches who's starting legitimately. I'm trying to really stress that point, because in the beginning, I thought that, I had a different kind of picture in my head as to how things can be, but then I noticed how things are in the field. And you can do business either way, but when you're starting up, you have to actually make that name for yourself first and get people to come towards you. So I had to figure out how to make it feel good for me and give out the right message, which sounds simple, but not so much when you're figuring it out.
Yeah, no, it's like an art and a science is you want to put stuff out that is authentic to you. You feel like, I
Yeah.
feel good putting this out and I want to keep on putting this style of stuff out. But then you're also trying to balance of like, there are certain marketing things you need to do to kind of get eyeballs, make sure it kind of jumps out to the people who you can help. So I understand that kind of balance of like art and science almost.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of both. Just recently I figured out and I made a decision, which is a big deal, especially in the social media space, of the kind of posts that I'd be making, because I had experimented with just about everything. And I had a whole bunch of guys tell me what happens. But then, guys only think about what matters to them as a guy. They don't think about themselves as a woman. And so I have had to actually explain, mostly because I don't mind explaining because I already know the information, but with certain individuals, they're like, oh, why do you follow these guys and not these guys? And I'm like, well, here's the thing. And I mentioned all of the traditional stuff that usually the men do. And I'm like, in the space where I am, I'm like, it's usually about attraction, seduction, techniques to, kind of lead the women, but it's rarely ever about actual relationships unless you're talking to an actual relationship coach. And then sometimes, I saw one guy on TikTok that I have to say, one thing I pride myself on is that I am never hypocritical. If I give you some kind of information, it's because I've experienced it and then I got some insight on it. And that's part of the reason why people trust me so much, because I know I'm never going to give them fluff. So in this case, I saw on TikTok, I know that there's quite a few interesting characters on it, but at the time, there was a relationship coach that was actually talking about how there was like a woman with kids that could communicate better. And I'm going, doesn't sound legit to me. She's a woman, you're a man, she's got kids. I don't know if you do. Like a family man never tells his woman how to do things. He only ever supports her. So in that case, I felt like that was a bit of a step out of line, just purely because there's a completely different dynamic going on, completely different, like everyone's allowed to go crazy at a certain point. That's human, which is again why people love me so much, because they can go crazy and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, you do you, boo. Like, but in my case, I'm like, had to work on my femininity, funny enough, which is why I worked, kind of looked up to a few female coaches as well. I felt like they had more nurturing power, and it was also a safe space to be and to develop and figure things out, as opposed to the usual men who were relying on measurements and comparison and conversion rates and numbers. Always about the numbers. And it's not just in coaching, but that's another topic. And so as I was developing with that, I got more into my feminine energy. I got a bit more spiritual and went, wow, so there's feminine and male energies, and it's got nothing to do with the person. It's actually to do with the balance and self-trust, basically. Which is why when it came to my girlfriends and they were like, wow, how did you, meet up with that other guy? And I was like, I did not impose a damn thing. I didn't do a damn thing, actually. Like, masculine-wise, I didn't do anything. And women who are used to doing everything, taking control of everything and having responsibility for everything, don't tend to trust the masculine as much. And in order to trust the masculine, they have to trust their feminine. So I kind of taught the other end that type of exercise, which again it's an exercise. It doesn't come overnight. You have to actually go, it's okay if this guy does this for me, just as well as it is for the guy to go, I'll lead this girl and I'll ask her for feedback, and it's okay to do that. In fact, it's needed, it's necessary, it's okay to do that. So that was like candy to me, realizing that you just need to, let these guys figure out that it's okay to do that. It's okay to do what the mainstream culture is telling us not to do. And I talk about it all the time. I talk about the hookup culture, the cancel culture, the apps and all the rest. And just the other day I had a guy in my chat going like, oh, we have a lockdown. It's like not the right time to meet women. And I just thought that was such a tragic announcement, because there's no better time than when it is in lockdown to actually work on your mindset. It's all I've ever been doing, actually. And that's how I'm here. But the guys don't realize that the woman's got nothing to do with it. It's how they are with themselves. So even recently I'm like, okay, well, do I want to really say I'm the dating coach as opposed to just, I don't know, self-trust coach? But like I said, these things evolve. So while I was at it, I've started doing this thing where I'm kind of calling out the business coaches in terms of what they're saying to me. mostly to tell them that I'm onto them. You don't go through a whole bunch of pitches in the DMs without, saying something. I do it more for fun, really. I'm more in the playful, relationship-centric place at the moment. And so basically, as a woman, I have had questions like, what do women want? What are women attracted to? Are women attracted to men at all? And so they have all these frustrated points. So I've actually had to decide, who am I going to help now? And that's basically all that ever matters, that focus and that focal point on who you're talking to and who you're trying to help, as opposed to just the outside elements. So it's just been one big growth for me, one huge growth learning curve. And it's been great. I've learned so many things about the men's health space, so many things, including the SEX agenda, which is again to do with the hormones and the regulations and all the spiritual stuff, which is actually thanks to a woman who deals in that area. And it's just amazing. It's magical, really. It's a beautiful time to be here and to figure out how to heal men and their loving relationships with themselves so that they can lead an actual family, because no other way can you. Not if you want the family and not break it.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about kind of what you're talking about now, how you were saying you kind of started out in even the 2 years ago when you started coaching, it was like you had people coming to you for relationship advice, but that's not what you jumped into straight away. There was still a journey of, okay, I think this is how I can help people. And then like, okay, it's actually kind of moving more in this direction. And then also how you almost like being not testing, because that is quite a, as you say, kind of a masculine thing. It's like testing what does better in content, what doesn't do better. But it's like you were seeing what's actually resonating with people, what feels good to you. And I think that's an important lesson is it's you can start in one direction, but it doesn't have to stay in that direction the entire time. It's going to change almost certainly as you change as a person as well. Like you said, you had to get more, you were watching kind of some more feminine focused coaches to kind of work on that side of yourself, that female energy. And that's the natural thing is like, don't be kind of, what's the word? Don't like kind of push away the opportunity for things to naturally change and grow as you kind of change and grow as well.
Oh, they're so scared of it. They're so scared of it, the poor buggers. They're just like, oh, what if this happens? And we are overthinkers anonymous big time. And that's something that I'm trying to, what's the word? I aim to get the guys to be present and to kind of go, that's not relevant, this is relevant. And it's just, the fact that I am kind of a 360 degrees kind of person, like I will help you talk to people. I will also help you get a date with that person. I will also help you get into a relationship and come into union with that person. That's actually part of my program, Attract, Keep, and Come into Union. And there's actually a bit on the keeping the woman and accepting the full package that she is as an energy in your life. And I talk about the difference between the West and the East and what they do really well, and like their pain points and their struggle points. And also in attracting, I essentially give a model of like how to consistently and effortlessly attract that person by just being yourself, being the best version of you, authentically you, and all the rest, all that kind of stuff. But then coming to union is more based on the balancing of things and also realizing that what you are as a unit is what you're going to make it become. And so it's not so much about wiping down their fears about what could be. It's more of a, this is what you're going to potentially deal with on a universal level. And it's really quite a something, because I just noticed that there's that whole issue of identity crisis as they move between the levels of getting that woman, keeping her, and it's actually preached everywhere, that the men, what they do when they attract the woman, even male coaches have told me, when they attract the woman and when they keep the woman, completely separate skills. And so I'm like, this is how you get to be in your masculine vulnerability, which is a big thing. And this is how you kind of make space to get through whatever challenges you're facing. In saying that, I have also made notes just to put in the background to make sure that people know this is not just me coming from nowhere. I have blogged for about 4+ years, and without any ads or anything. I think I've actually tracked onto 140 followers by now on WordPress, which is a lot of fun. It's also me going, oh crap, I can't get off yet. So I realized that there's an opportunity there to keep going, and people want to hear more, and they realize I've got the quality going on, because I just sort of give it all out, but I'm like, this is what's facing right now, this is how we can get through. And this is the real issue, not that, but that. So I think a lot of people enjoy the writing, and it's something that I'm always writing about something. And I have been following a bunch of Instagram accounts that have really inspired me. I relate to them, but they also inspire me. So I take whatever lessons they learned or whatever the heck they were trying to say into my programs and into my coaching, so that guys actually get the benefit of not just energetically how to go about things, but also be able to anticipate in a healthy way what to do when things come up. And it's not in a, this is the tiger, he's going to come at your face. It's more of a, these are the external factors, and no one talks about the culture, the systems, the family, the priorities, but I will. And they hate talking about their networks and their friends. They're like, why are you touching my friends, Anna? And I'm like, because they make or break you, sweetie. Like, so I go into that whole 360-degree angle, and I'm very proud of that, because I'm not a one-sided coach. And that's why I think people keep coming to me, because they know I've got the goods on every single topic as it goes. Because I researched for over 10 years as I went through family split, move overseas, did my studying, did my work. I worked in Zurich for about 6 years. God, I hope not. 6 months as an intern for a multinational company. So I've done those 2 jobs. And so, you do what's acceptable, what's proper. And then there's the bit on the side where you just can't stop, you want to basically, tell the people to get alive in a certain way in terms of like, okay, so this is what I see happening. Why do you think that happened? And don't you think that you did the right thing in this example? People are very, very hard on themselves. So when you come at them and they go, can you just slap me, Anna? Just slap me silly. And I'll be like, if I must. Like, I don't do that. I'm like, no, you'll figure it out. You have to trust yourself with that. And that's what we are building on.
Yeah, but it sounds like you've, even while you've been coaching people in this, well, men in this space, you're also, like you said, you're following other channels that kind of inspire you to bring in other aspects, different learnings, things like that. Like, how do you kind of, like, how does that kind of come up? Is it just stuff you're interested in yourself that you're trying to work on yourself? Or is it, oh, I think the people I'm working with will really benefit from maybe this focus, let me check it out? Kind of, how do you look at those things?
2 things, I think. 2 things come up. First of all, intuition. Part of the reason why I'm even here, because if I was using logic all the time, I'd just be like, screw you all, I'm out of here, I'm going to be a hermit for the rest of my life, which will never happen. I'm too outgoing for that. I enjoy talking to people. But it was mostly the intuition of kind of sensing people's energies and sensing what they know and how they approach life, as opposed to who someone else might tell me. And half the time when you get people telling you advice, they're projecting from their own accord. The people who already had success, fulfillment, satisfaction, you name it, lived their life well, they'll never tell you what to do, ever. And that's a big trick. Second of all, it was just my research. Deep down, I was looking for answers all the time, because you could basically say I was technically raised by, one parent, even though my parents were technically married. But the way things were, I had to figure things out for myself. I was kind of protecting things for a while. I was looking up to my mom. And it got to the point where one of my girlfriends was actually up in the UK while I was in Switzerland studying. And she's like, Anna, your mom is okay. Like, when you're that focused on that one goal and then it's done, a couple of things happen. First of all, you're like, oh, like, takes time to process when you're so intensely targeting that one goal. Second of all, it's, well, what do I do now? Who am I? What's my identity? Like, I'm confused. What do I do now in life? Because when that singular goal is being met, what do you do next? So identity crisis is not a joke. That's why I also talk about it a lot. And even in coming to union, I always go back to the same thing. I literally just hack a formula of 3 things, basically. Knowing what you want as a person, reminding yourself of what you've gone through, and then kind of teaching them how the feminine can actually add to your life. Like, basically I clear the blocks to figure out, okay, how do I guide us both, but also realize that this is what the feminine is here for in its healthy state, and how to recognize it, basically. Because there's this whole funny field of quantity when it comes to, I guess you could actually say, toxic masculinity. Because when it's all about manipulation and all about measurement and superiority, you're going to tend to impose a lot of your will onto others, and that's toxic. by definition.
Mm.
And so what I do is actually go like, this is actually what's most important. And second of all, you have the choice, but not just that, just because that person rejected you, that's actually sometimes a blessing. You're not supposed to be coming onto every girl. You're not supposed to be approved by everyone. There's a reason for everything to happen. And the minute that the guys validate themselves, which is a whole process in itself, they obviously tend to take less pressure off the answer that the girl will give them, and take that more as a lesson, and actually have that as constructive feedback, something else that is only in corporate offices or in counseling sessions. There's always the reflection, but there's never the constructive feedback thing, which I kind of allow to happen. It's all about communication skills at the end of the day. And I'm like, if that was one thing I had to teach, it's just choice, and the fact that you get to choose which energy fits your life best.
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot there.
Oh, there usually is. That's why I have a blog. Too much in my head.
Yeah.
But people love it.
Okay, so you're saying the way you kind of look at introducing things into your teaching is you kind of just sense kind of what's almost like missing a little bit, or kind of where a positive direction could go, and you try it out, and maybe it reflects, maybe it doesn't reflect, but it's just following that gut instinct of, I think this could be a good thing.
Definitely, the experimentation thing is also completely forgotten, because the more you put pressure on a certain outcome, and the more you go, I'm screwed if this doesn't go right. Like in one cafe challenge that I gave the guys, that was actually available in the first step, about 6 mini lives that I did, and they all kind of addressed little points of date preparation, but it's really more of a preparation to figure out how to basically approach a woman. And I noticed that there was a lot of pressure that the men put on themselves to just get out there and to just sort of make a chat and go from chat to getting a contact. And so I move it from, you're not getting a contact, guys. You're getting a follow up on the connection you just made. If she gives you that, then it means green flag. If she doesn't, then it means it was just a chat. Like, don't put pressure on the conversation. And they do all the time. I mean, it's not so much a conversation thing for them. It's more of a, is she gonna like me? And at the end of the day, in a relationship, guys are also very icky on how much of themselves the girl's gonna accept.
Right.
So that's why I never,
the vulnerability side of things.
Absolutely. I always put the emphasis on, I mean, you have every right to brag about the materialism, the car that you have, the house that you have, the promotion you just got, what job you have, but you got to make sure that it's not the kind of bragging that's going to lead on a girl that's into materialism, because that's the one that's not going to care about you. And you need your health sorted first. So when you have that priority in mind, and I've had guys also come up with big blown goals like, I want to move out, college degree, job, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's a huge, fantastic goal. That's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But I do tell them that, any goal is a great goal, any goal, because it means that you're moving forward. And the one thing that guys also, pain is always going to move you as a human condition. But when it comes to deciding on the relationship, I usually go, what's the goal here? Like, have you ticked off these little boxes? And the boxes are things as in, you have feedback, you have come up, because the last thing anyone wants is a one-sided relationship. So I'm like, that's much in the long term, and you're going to feel it. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is why some marriages split. Like, I'm talking 20, 30 year marriages, because the guy realizes and he accepts and finally moves forward with a split. So you want to kind of eliminate all those pain points and get them to actually see that it is okay to live for yourself for a bit, because that's how you're going to understand yourself. And that goes against every social protocol we have on anything.
Yeah. No, I think that's a powerful
360 degrees, baby.
That's definitely a powerful point for us to wrap up on is, yeah, I mean, like you said, you've really touched on so many different aspects of like vulnerability, and also the way you work with people and how you see working with people, and how it's not just, it's not all about like perfection. Like, you can go for goals, they might not be right, but it's all about those baby steps in progress. I think that's really powerful for people to take away. So if people wanted to reach out to you in regards to either working with you with their daily life, if they're a man or a woman, or they want to talk to you about your coaching side of things, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
I always put in the same contact wherever it is. You can definitely find me on Instagram through the handle transcending_ with Anna. You can also DM me on Facebook through Anya Likhoa. That's ANYALIKHOA. Yeah, those are two good contacts, unless you want to check out the website and all that I have on it, including freebies, which is basically through vibrancelifecoach.com.jimdosite.com. And yeah, for the moment, that's basically it.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll include everything in the bottom. And you mentioned also a lot of freebies and things like that, which sounded really powerful for people. So I'm sure they'll want to pick those up. But yeah, thanks so much for the time this morning and today.
Pleasure's all mine. I love talking about these things, and I enjoy kind of giving the ship to people's perspectives, which is pretty much how everything happened, really. Really, I think for me, what propelled me forward was basically I just refused to go a certain way that I knew was going to happen if I didn't choose the more positive, healthy lifestyle for myself, which is funny because that doesn't normally come when the family's shoving a bunch of expectations on you. I am, to give guys some context, I am the oldest grandkid and also the only child out of an Eastern European family. All the Eastern families would be like, ooh, that's a tough one. And I'm like, and I managed through long distance. Had my mom do all the peacekeeping with the family because there was the usual dramas involved, but that's the thing. You build yourself up and go, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I want this. And that is very potent, very powerful, and a direction I try to infuse all my trainings with, because that's what people need right now. That's what guys need right now. That's what they need from themselves. So absolutely. Thank you so much for asking me, and it's been a pleasure.
Perfect. Chat soon.